and I'm really excited about how to make internet access more affordable. Right? So this is my friend Dinesh. He's in Himachal Pradesh. He's currently, he's standing on top of a tower and he's setting up long-distance Wi-Fi networks. So basically the idea here is this is just the same kind of Wi-Fi that you would use in your house. Very cheap little Wi-Fi access point, and all you do is you hook up a big antenna to it, and you make it directional. And this makes the Wi-Fi work over many, many kilometers. So that's one way of doing cheap internet access. Now, of course, there are a lot of other people who are thinking about how to make internet access cheap. SpaceX is thinking about this global network of what they call low Earth orbit satellites. Google is thinking about sending balloons all over the Earth and then beaming the internet down from the balloons. Facebook is thinking about these giant drones. All of these designs kind of have the same mentality. It's almost like a Western mentality. We're going to literally fly over your country and beam down internet. And we're going to send all the requests up to this centralized cloud service. So incidentally, just as a sort of a personal side note, when I graduated a year ago, I had job offers from Google and Facebook to work on these kinds of projects. And the reason that I came to India instead of going and working for them was that I had a really strong hunch that this is not the right way to think about this problem. Instead, I thought that we should really sit down and understand what is life actually like for someone in a village in rural Bihar, like this picture is showing. How do people use technology? How do they use the internet? What do they use the internet for? What are the challenges that they encounter on a day-to-day basis? What do they want? What do they need? All of these sort of other designs don't think about that at all. It's just literally we're going to beam the freaking internet down from a drone. It's kind of crazy, right? So actually, I'm going to ask a quick survey question. Most of you probably say yes, I'm guessing. How many of you have heard of one of these Android apps? Share It, Zapier, Zender? Almost all of you. Okay, great. You're actually the perfect demographic for these apps. When I asked the same question to a lot of the old fogies in Microsoft Research, almost none of them said yes. Because they're all wealthy, they can afford data, they can just download the video over Wi-Fi. But in India, where data costs are very high, these apps are very popular because it's a way for you to get your hands on, say, some Bollywood movie without having to pay for those data costs. So this is a training that we did in rural Chhattisgarh. These are predominantly Adivasi community members, so very, very low income members here. And almost all of them had used Share It. So Share It is a huge, huge phenomenon. You guys already know about it, but it's a huge thing in India. Actually, Share It claims to have over 200 million users in India. So that's massive, okay? By the way, I think did anyone not raise their hand? Does everyone know what these apps do? Everyone knows what the apps do. Okay, great. So part of the reason that Share It is so popular, Share It is possible even, is because of the way that people access files on the internet. So what I'm showing you here is, suppose we were to rank all of the websites on the internet. So Facebook.com, Google.com, all of the different websites on the internet. We're going to sort them according to how popular they are, how many people access that file. And if you look at this distribution here, the vast majority of accesses to those documents goes to a very small percentage of the most popular documents. So Google.com, Facebook.com, all these kinds of very popular websites. So similarly, when people share files on Share It, they're all sharing the same files. Everyone wants Bahubali. Everyone wants Dangal, right? It's not the case that everyone is accessing their own file. Everyone accesses the same files. And that's part of why Share It is possible. Because people in my vicinity, my friend group, they have files that I want. Okay? Now, another reason that Share It is so popular in India is it's possible in India. It's such a good, most popular app, is because of the kinds of things that people share. So if you look at all of the traffic going across the internet, the IP is a internet protocol. If you look at all of the bytes that are going across the internet, you'd see that 70% of all of those bytes belong to large video files. And even Cisco even predicts that by 2020, 82% of all traffic on the internet will belong to videos. So these large video files are another reason that shared is so popular, because shared's very good at transferring that kind of thing. Okay? And by the way, it's not just India. Apps like ShareIt, or even using old school Bluetooth, like some of you may have done before, is very, very popular in any part of the world where data costs are much more expensive than relative to the income levels. So here's a picture of Mexico. You can basically stick your hand in a bin and grab a USB stick full of some genre of music. Afghanistan has a very wide ecosystem of selling content over Bluetooth. So it's really quite pervasive. And moreover, this has been going on for a long time. This is a research paper that our group wrote in 2010, looking at how people in urban slums in India, in Bangalore actually, use Bluetooth to share files. Okay? Now, despite the popularity of apps like ShareIt and Bluetooth, there's some major limitations to the way that it's done today. So one of the most important limitations is that people typically only transfer with friends, with people that they already know. And you basically have to send a WhatsApp message or verbally talk to your friend and say, what movies do you have? What pictures do you have? What music do you have? It would be very awkward for you to go up to someone at a bus stand and say, hey, I don't know you, but do you have any movies for me? Do you have Bahubali 2? That would be really weird, right? And you can also think about a lot of the things that are on the internet, as we know it, don't exist in device-to-device sharing. So for example, you can't discover content. You don't have a way to tell if something is malware or not. You don't know if it's a virus. So the main research question we're asking is, if we introduce some of those services, like content discovery or malware detection, can we change people's behaviors? In particular, can we encourage people to share with people they don't know, which doesn't really happen today? So for example, if I'm sitting in this classroom, I've never met any of you, I have an app running on my phone, you have Bahubali 2, I have Dongle, we want to exchange. Can we do that automatically? I've never met you before. Could we have our phones automatically turn on Wi-Fi, automatically do the transfer, and then have those movies show up on our phone? That's a kind of behavior that doesn't happen in India currently, and we'd like to see if we can introduce technology, could we enable that kind of behavior? So I have a quick video. We built an app, and I'll quickly... By installing SwapIt, you can immediately earn 15 rupees in mobile top-up credits. You can also earn 10 rupees each for the first 2 file transfers you successfully complete. To earn these credits, you will need to enter your phone number. When we first use SwapIt, we need to select the files that we have on our phone that we are willing to share with others. Here we see music, videos, and sponsored files, which I'll explain later. So we'll go ahead and select some files to share here. Once we've selected which file to share, we click on the green button at the bottom of the screen. Now we see all of the files that other people within a 60-kilometer radius are willing to share with us. If you're looking for a specific song or video, you can find it by clicking on the search icon in the upper right-hand corner and typing the name of what you want. Then you can click the X to exit the search. If you think
that a file is spam or inappropriate, you can click and hold that file name in order to report that file. And if I want to refresh this list of files, I can swipe upward with the refresh gesture. Now, once I've selected which files I want, again, I'll click on the green button. In SWAP-IT, it's very important to understand the concept of a match. Swap means to both give and to take. A match is another user who both has something that you want and wants something that you have. So, to get as many matches as possible, you should make sure to share as many popular files as you can. Let's click on one of these matches. When we click on the match, we'll see a map of where we are, shown by this blue pin. And if we zoom out, we'll see a red pin, which indicates where the match is located. We can use this map to move ourselves within range of the match so that we can complete the file transfer. Smartphones can transfer files at a range of up to 80 meters. Some of these matches have a rupee symbol next to them. Whenever we have a sponsored file that someone else wants, we can earn between 1 and 2 mobile top-up credits for every time we send that file to someone else. And sponsored files, unlike other files, do not have to be mutual, so someone can request a sponsored file without having anything to offer in return. Whenever we come within 80 meters of a match, our phones will automatically detect that they are within range of each other, and they will initiate the file transfer on our behalf. When a file transfer completes, we'll see a notification telling us that we have new files on our device. When we click on that notification, we can view those files by navigating to the SWAP-IT directory. If you have questions, concerns, or comments, you can click the question mark in the upper part of the screen, where you can either leave a voicemail or write written feedback and let us know what you think about the application. We hope you enjoy.
Okay, so just because we sat in our cushy office in Bangalore and we designed this app doesn't mean that there are going to be unforeseen challenges. The kinds of people that we're targeting, like those Adivasi community members I showed, they think about the world very differently than I think about the world. So we need to overcome some of these unanticipated challenges. And the way to answer those usability challenges is to go out into the field and train them and see what are the design issues that come up. So we've done three trainings so far. What we do is we partner with NGOs. So there are 2 NGOs here, CGNet Swara and Video Volunteers. They do something called citizen journalism. So they go out to rural villages and they do news stories on local issues. So for example, some lake is creating malaria, or the NREGA payments haven't come in yet, or this government official is corrupt, right? They do these local news stories, either in video or audio, and then they distribute it out to the people in that community. So we work with those 2 NGOs to train people how to use this kind of technology to agitate their public officials. And they're trying to use our app to distribute their video files to the people in their villages. Okay? We're also thinking about partnering with the IIT Bombay in rural Maharashtra. I should mention that the pilots we've done so far are in rural Chhattisgarh and 2 places in Bihar. Okay? So here are a couple photos of those trainings. Here's the training we did in rural Chhattisgarh. This is my friend Chirag. Here's another intern I had. They're both interns. This is another intern I have named Sanket. He's doing a training here in Patna. And then we also did a training in a pretty remote village in rural Bihar. Now, a kind of funny thing happened when city folk take the time to drive out to a rural village in Bihar. People tend to get really excited. So they wrote a news article about us. It was kind of fun. You can see Sanket's about a foot taller than everyone else. And they saw a white person and they got very excited. The journalists got very excited. They said, this technology must have come all the way from America, which is of course not true. This is done in Bangalore. So anyway, they were very excited. So when we do these trainings, we ask a bunch of survey questions in addition to doing the training, right? And the most striking result from that survey was the following. We asked them, how many of you have ever used Bluetooth to share files? All of them said yes. And what was surprising to me was, we asked them, how many of you have used the location feature of your phone? Our app requires location. You need to know where the other person is to be able to do the transfer. And 0 out of 17 of them had ever used the location feature on their phone, even though they have these Android smartphones. Some of them have Android smartphones. They have Google Maps pre-installed on the phone, yet they've never clicked on Google Maps. They've never used it, right? In fact, one or two of the people that we trained in Patna, we actually had to explain to them, what is a map? This person had taken geography. She knew all the states of India. She knew where Pakistan was. She knew where Bangladesh was. But no one had ever, she didn't have this mental model that a map, the shape of India, is what India actually looks like if you looked at it from a bird's eye perspective, right? From a satellite. And actually, it's not just her. I think this is actually quite pervasive. People in rural areas particularly, but even in a place like Bangalore, it's not very intuitive to think about maps. So an interesting research challenge, one more slide. The great irony here, though, despite the fact that they don't use location on their maps, on their phones, is that the concept of location is very core to the way they think about the world. So we asked them, are you comfortable sharing the address of your home with someone you've never met before? And the answer I got, again, was very surprising. They said yes, as long as we know which village they came from. Because if we know which village they came from, then we can trust them. So this concept of location is really core to the way they think, yet they don't ever use it on their apps. So a research question that came out of this is, if you think about in Bangalore, in Hyderabad, in Gurgaon, there are all these startups who are thinking about apps for urban users. And the reason they focus on urban users is because urban users tend to have more money, and they need to make money. But those startups, they haven't had the financial flexibility yet to think about, how would you design an app that a rural user would want to use, that is compatible with the way that rural users kind of live their lives? So for example, how do you give directions to someone who doesn't think in terms of a map? How do you think about access control? If I'm sharing a file with someone else, the way they establish trust about who I want to share it with is very different than the way that Dropbox probably thinks about it. Similarly, how do you obtain goods and services in a rural village? In an informal economy, that these are typically cash economies, how do you think about lending? It's probably not the same way that someone in a city in India thinks about using Paytm, that has a bank account, that has a balance. All these kinds of concepts are very foreign. So this is really a pretty broad research agenda. How do you design an app that is compatible, that's appropriate for rural users? Now, I've been doing another kind of field work. It doesn't involve going out to villages. Instead, my field work involves sitting in a Skype session and talking to lawyers and talking to security people and talking to these people. So we've been trying to release our app officially on the Google Play Store. But in order to do that, Microsoft has a lot of very hard questions for us to answer, particularly because people are probably going to be using this app illegally, either to share pirated content, copyrighted content, or to do other things that we don't necessarily condone. So these challenges are actually very important for us to address. And again, they come up by having these conversations with these lawyers and with these security people. We can shape our research agenda, come up with interesting research problems. So I'll give you a couple examples of what these research challenges are. It's possible for users to share illegal content. An example of illegal content might be child pornography. Now, if you think about a product like YouTube, what YouTube does is they have algorithms that scan that content and check, they have some classifier to check whether or not this might contain child pornography or illegal content. But the interesting technical constraint here, we're very different from YouTube in an important way, that our users cannot afford to send the file up to the cloud. And those algorithms that YouTube and Microsoft as well, they also have a team that builds these algorithms. Those algorithms are designed to run on very big servers in the cloud, right? So an interesting technical constraint is, can you design an algorithm that's very resource efficient, that could run on a low-end smartphone and only send a small amount of data to the cloud, yet still have high accuracy in being able to detect these illegal content? We also talked to the team that we talked to that builds these algorithms also had an interesting constraint. They said, we're very concerned that if we give this code to someone, they might be able to reverse engineer it. And if they reverse engineer it, then they could somehow get around our algorithm and put some filter over the video that could allow them to get away with what they're doing. So another interesting question that came out of this, can we obfuscate the code, either using cryptography or some other technique, that makes it very difficult for someone to be able to reverse engineer those algorithms? And similarly, the same concern, by the way, also arises for viruses. You might want to check whether there's malware on some file. Another concern is, another interesting research challenge is the following. Currently, our app has a very bad user interface to name objects. We name objects by using file names, this vid underscore 12345. And that's very, for one, that's very unintuitive. I don't know what those numbers mean. I don't know what that file means. But it's also a security concern because someone can rename their file and put in a piece of malware and get it onto lots of people's phones. A much better way of displaying that to the users would be like a movie poster or an album cover. But the question is, how can we automatically detect, given a file, the contents of the file, how can we automatically detect what is the album cover, what is the video, what is the copyright owner for this file? And again, the interesting technical constraint is how can we do that on a resource-constrained low-end smartphone? The last challenge, if you look at most products, certainly most Microsoft products, they assume, for authentication purposes, they assume that you have an email and you have a password, a typed password. But if you think about the users that we're trying to target here, many of them are low literate, and certainly they don't have email addresses. That's only for like corporate people. They don't really think about that, right? This notion of signing in with an email and a password is very, very unintuitive. It's a huge barrier to usage in rural India. So the question is, how can we create an authentication mechanism that's resilient to spoofing, so it's secure, yet it's intuitive for someone in a rural village? So one thing I'm thinking is like a Rangoli. You know, people know these Rangoli patterns. Maybe we could have patterns like this that would be easy for them to remember, but yet are resistant to these kinds of attacks. Okay, now the last sort of set of research challenges that we need to deal with is how can we make a business model of this? It costs some money to run this infrastructure, so we need to figure out how can we make this scalable, how can we make it sustainable? So we've been thinking about a couple different models here. One example is what we're calling the pull model. So think about, suppose you're in Bangalore. You don't have Wi-Fi at home, like 98% of Indian households do not have Wi-Fi at home. Suppose I click on a video link, and my phone says, you're using a cellular connection. That's going to cost you a lot of money. It's a large file. It's going to be too expensive. And your phone instead sends that to a nearby hub. It says, hey, nearby hub, you have Wi-Fi. Download that video file for me. And now think about, I don't know how many of you know Swiggy. Swiggy's maybe only in Bangalore. The Swiggy is basically a food delivery service. These guys run around on scooters and they drop off food at your doorstep. Think about the same thing, except instead of delivering food, we're going to deliver that video file using peer-to-peer Wi-Fi. So your phone sends its GPS update and the file that you want, the video file that you want. The Swiggy driver downloads it onto their phone. They drive to your home, and then transparently, without you needing to talk to them, the file comes to you automatically. And now, again, there's a bunch of different interesting research challenges that come up as a result of this kind of business model. One example is delegation of trust. Suppose you're accessing a secure piece of content that you need to log in for, or you're accessing something over HTTPS. Can you delegate the trust to that courier? You need to trust them in some way that they're not going to mess with your content. Another model we've been thinking about is what we're calling push. This doesn't, pull actually does kind of exist in the internet. Push doesn't really exist in the internet. And the idea is the following. Suppose that you're a content provider. You're someone, or a public service announcer. Maybe you have some video about, I don't know, tuberculosis education. You want to get that video into people's hands. You want to pay people to watch that video. The idea here is, suppose that we have existing users who are already using the system. I want to incentivize you to share that as widely as possible. So maybe I live in a village, and I need to walk 3 or 4 kilometers to the next village. I'm not willing to do that. That's going to take a lot of time for me to walk to the next village, unless I'm going to be paid. Maybe I'm paid, say, 50 rupees to go walk 3 kilometers. If I'm paid, then we can have a much more viral spread of that video. By the way, in the YouTube video I showed you, that was the notion of this sponsored file. So if I have a sponsored file, I can earn top-up credits for doing that. But an interesting research question here, suppose that I am a content provider. I have one of these videos. I want to get it out to people. I have a fixed budget of rupees that I'm going to give out to people. And I have some objective. I want it to either spread as widely as possible, or I want to target a specific demographic. Or maybe I have a very specific use case in mind. Maybe instead of downloading a file, I want to upload a file to a particular location. Given my objective and given my fixed budget, a very interesting theory question is, how do I allocate my budget to maximize my objective? Now, I've shown you earlier how can we make, with ShareIt, you already know how you can transfer files for free without invoking any data charges. But our app still involves some data. You have to talk to the cloud in order to get the list of files, the locations, etc. So an interesting idea here is, how can we make this completely free? And the basic insight is the following. Suppose that you have an app running on your phone that makes a toll-free phone call or makes a missed call to some number. And instead of having a human on the other side, you have what's called an IVR system, an interactive voice response system. That IVR system is going to respond to you not with a human voice, but with a modulated data signal. So probably you aren't old enough to remember there's this thing called modems, dial-up modems. They use a phone line to transfer data. Same idea, except we're going to do it on mobile phones. So we're going to run software in that phone that's going to encode and decode the signals over that voice connection. Now the nice thing is that this is free. This is free for the user. And then on the other end, they're the one who's paying for that charge. So this app, imagine you want to run something like WhatsApp, a messaging service. WhatsApp, by the way, is very popular. It's 1.3 billion users, and most of you probably use it. The reason it's so popular is that it's cheap. It's really cheap data. But a lot of users in India, even though it's cheap, they don't necessarily keep their prepaid data plans topped up. Maybe they spend most of the week with 0 balance. Then they need to send a few messages. They go and they put in 20 rupees. They send their messages, and then again it's empty again. So they don't use WhatsApp because they don't have a balance. But imagine you had a completely free service. You don't even need to have any balance whatsoever. If you want to take over a service like WhatsApp, the way to do it is to make it completely free. Okay, so just wrapping up real quick. The research agenda, the broad research agenda, is how do we think about an internet architecture that's appropriate for people in rural India, or people in Africa, or people in emerging markets. And it's going to look a lot different than the way that the current internet looks. And there are a lot of research challenges that come up when you're trying to realize that vision. So finally, one thing I'll say is that we're always looking for interns. It's not just this project. This is my project. There are about 30 million other projects within our lab. We do machine learning. We do theory, we do systems, we do security, etc. So please come talk to me after. It would be great to have you come and intern with us and learn about research and all that good stuff. So thank you very much. Are there any questions? I don't know. Yeah.
So you said only
right.
what that has
Great. Yeah, it's a great question. Well, one of the things I mentioned was if we can somehow get a watermark of the content. So YouTube actually does this. So when I upload a YouTube video, they have a way of detecting, even if I make a modification to the file. Maybe I truncate the file or I add something to the video frames. They still have some smart algorithms for detecting, this actually belongs to, it's actually Dongle, it belongs to XYZ copyright owner, or virus scanning. Can I automatically run an algorithm on this that detects whether it's malware? So Share It doesn't have any of that functionality. It's just, you can think of Share It as a USB stick. That's all it is. The idea, the vision here is if we can provide some of these services, you trust YouTube, other people upload videos to YouTube and you download them, because they have these mechanisms, technical mechanisms in place that makes that viable. So the vision is, can we do the same thing except on low-end smartphones? That's the idea. Does that make sense?
Thank you, Collin. So as a token of appreciation, I request our chairman of the department to share it.